One of the most heartbreaking storylines in the Testaments isn't Agnes, Daisy, or even Aunt Lydia. It's Hulda. And what's so tragic about Hulda's story is that most people inside Gilead would probably say she's not the victim. That's how twisted Gilead really is. By the end of Season 1, Hulda had already experienced something that no young girl should ever have to endure. She became another victim of Dr. Grove, a man who abused the trust placed in him and exploited the very girls he was supposed to protect. Yet if there's one thing we've learned from both The Handmaid's Tale and the Testaments, it's that Gilead doesn't punish victims. It punishes people who expose uncomfortable truths. And that's exactly why I think Hulda's story could become one of the darkest parts of Season 2. Let's talk about it. One thing that stood out during Season 1 was the way Hulda reacted after everything happened. She wasn't focused on revenge. She wasn't focused on justice. She wasn't even focused on exposing Dr. Grove. Instead, she was terrified about what would happen to her future. Think about how heartbreaking that is. The first thing on her mind wasn't what was done to her. It was whether she would still be considered worthy of marriage. That tells you everything you need to know about life in Gilead. Girls aren't raised to think about their dreams. They're raised to think about their value. And in Gilead, value is often tied to marriage prospects. That's why Hulda's fear felt so real. She knew that if people found out what happened, she could end up being blamed. Not because she did anything wrong, but because Gilead often protects powerful men while demanding silence from young women. Now here's where my theory begins. I don't think Hulda's story is over. In fact, I think Season 2 could make her one of the most important characters in the entire show. Why? Because Hulda represents something dangerous. She represents evidence. Dr. Grove may be gone, exposed, arrested, or punished depending on how events continue, but the damage he caused doesn't disappear with him. Victims remain, memories remain, secrets remain, and Hulda knows more than almost anyone. The question is whether she'll stay silent. For most of Season 1, Hulda looked like someone trying to survive. But survival can only carry a person so far. Eventually pain turns into anger. Eventually fear turns into resentment. And eventually resentment turns into rebellion. What if that's where Hulda is heading? What if Dr. Grove didn't create another broken victim? What if he accidentally created another enemy of Gilead? That's the possibility that fascinates me. Because if Hulda starts speaking openly, she could expose something much bigger than one abusive doctor. She could expose the entire system that protected him. And that's a very dangerous thing. Now let's talk about her future match. This is where things get really interesting. Many fans assume Hulda's chances of marriage have been damaged. But I'm not convinced. In fact, I think the opposite may happen. Remember how Gilead works. Appearances matter more than truth. If Aunt Lydia successfully buries the scandal or reframes the situation, Hulda could still be presented as a suitable bride. The leadership may actually want her married quickly. Why? Because marriage solves problems. Or at least that's how Gilead sees it. A married woman becomes someone else's responsibility. Questions stop being asked. Rumors fade. Attention shifts elsewhere. A quick marriage could be the easiest way to make the problem disappear. But here's the dark part. What if Hulda's future husband isn't chosen for compatibility? What if he's chosen for silence? Imagine a commander who already knows the truth. Imagine someone powerful enough to overlook the scandal because doing so benefits him politically. That would create a terrifying situation. Hulda could find herself trapped in another arrangement where everyone knows the truth, but nobody is willing to acknowledge it. And honestly, that feels very consistent with the world of Gilead. The system isn't designed to heal people. It's designed to maintain order. Another possibility is even darker. What if Hulda isn't matched to a commander at all? What if she's redirected toward a different path? One thing the Testament has repeatedly shown us is that Gilead always finds a use for people. If someone no longer fits one role, they're often pushed into another. Could Hulda become an aunt? It's possible. Think about it. She's intelligent. She's obedient on the surface. She's already seen the uglier side of Gilead. And most importantly, she has reasons to distrust the marriage system. Those qualities could make her a candidate for Ardua Hall. But there's a catch. Women who become aunts gain power. And power changes people. The real question isn't whether Hulda could become an aunt. The real question is what kind of aunt she would become. Would she become another Vidala? Cold, strict, merciless? Or would she become something closer to Aunt Lydia? A woman who understands the cruelty of the system while secretly working against it. Personally, I think the second option is far more likely. There's another theory I can't stop thinking about. What if Hulda becomes an ally for Agnes? Season 1 spent a surprising amount of time connecting these two characters. Agnes tried to encourage her. Agnes tried to comfort her. Agnes tried to help her navigate the impossible situation she found herself in. Those scenes didn't feel accidental. The writers could have used any character. Instead, they repeatedly paired Hulda and Agnes together. That makes me think their stories are still connected. And if Agnes continues moving toward rebellion in Season 2, Hulda may follow. Not because she's naturally rebellious, but because she's been given a reason. One of the recurring themes in the Testaments is that resistance often begins with personal pain. June didn't become a symbol overnight. She became one because she lost everything. Agnes is starting to question Gilead because she's experienced betrayal. Becca rebelled because she reached her breaking point. What if Hulda is next? What if Dr. Grove's actions become the event that changes her forever? That would be incredibly powerful storytelling, because it would show how Gilead creates its own enemies. Every act of cruelty, every injustice, every abuse of power eventually comes back to haunt the regime. And Hulda could become living proof of that. The most tragic possibility, however, is that Hulda never gets justice at all. That's the theory I keep coming back to. Not because I want it to happen, because it feels realistic. Gilead survives by pretending problems don't exist. Dr. Grove was never the real problem. The system that protected him was. And systems don't disappear overnight. Even if Grove falls, the culture that enabled him remains. Which means Hulda could spend Season 2 trying to rebuild her life while carrying emotional scars nobody around her wants to acknowledge. That would be devastating, but it would also be incredibly honest. Not every victim gets closure. Not every wound heals neatly. Sometimes survival itself becomes the victory. Still, I think the Testaments is setting up something bigger. I think Hulda's story is heading toward a moment where she finally chooses whether to remain silent or speak out. And when that moment arrives, it could have consequences far beyond her own future. Because once one girl starts telling the truth, others may follow. Once one victim refuses to stay quiet, the entire foundation begins to crack. And that's exactly what Gilead fears most. Not armies, not foreign governments, not Mayday. The truth. The truth has always been Gilead's greatest enemy, and Hulda may be carrying a piece of that truth. So while everyone is focused on Agnes, Daisy, June, and Aunt Lydia heading into Season 2, don't overlook Hulda, because sometimes the quietest characters end up changing everything. Dr. Grove may have thought he destroyed her future, but what if he actually created one of the people who helps destroy Gilead itself? That would be the ultimate irony. And if that happens, Hulda's story won't be remembered as a tragedy. It will be remembered as the beginning of a rebellion.